Hold fast, maid honor. We're preparing a boarding party.
The story kicks off in 1942 with Major Gus March Phillips and Anders Lassen sailing under a Swedish flag when a German patrol unexpectedly boards their boat. The German officer in charge, clearly annoyed by their drunken and carefree act, orders his men to drench the vessel in kerosene and set it ablaze. He recalls a similar instance where he had previously torched another boat. However, things take a quick turn when the Germans discover Henry Hayes, an armed crew member hiding below deck. Without hesitation, Henry fires, throwing the scene into chaos. Seizing the moment, Anders slits the German officer's throat, and within seconds, the entire boarding party is taken out and dumped into the sea. Meanwhile, a German destroyer nearby is the target of Freddy Alvarez, who has planted explosives on its hull. As the destroyer starts firing at the sailboat, the team mocks it by dangling the lifeless body of the German officer.
Work, Frederick. Thank you, Captain.
Right on cue, the explosives detonate, sending the destroyer to the ocean floor. Jumping back to late 1941, the German U-boats have taken control of the Atlantic, making it impossible for merchant ships to safely transport supplies between the US and the UK. The British are struggling to hold off Nazi Germany, and London is constantly bombarded by the Luftwaffe. The U-boats continue to sink British supply ships at an alarming rate, cutting off essential supplies, ammunition, and manpower. The situation is dire. The UK needs at least 3 million tons of supplies every month, but the relentless attacks ensure that half of that is lost at sea. Until the British regain control of the Atlantic, sending US troops into Europe remains out of the question. Fast forward 25 days earlier, Britain is feeling the squeeze as German U-boats tighten their grip on crucial supply routes. Desperate for a counterattack, Prime Minister Winston Churchill meets with Brigadier General Colin Gubbins and Lieutenant Commander Ian Fleming. The plan? Sabotage the U-boat's resupply system by targeting the Italian vessel Duchessa d'Aosta and its 2 tugboats, stationed at Fernando Po, a Spanish-controlled island. These ships play a key role in refueling and repairing the Nazi fleet.
If we attack that colony, the rest of us...
But bombing them is out of the question. Fernando Po is neutral territory, and an attack could push other neutral nations into siding with Hitler. The mission is high stakes. If the operatives are caught by the British, they'll face imprisonment. If the Nazis catch them, they'll be tortured and executed. At the Special Operations Executive SOE, headquarters in London, Brigadier General Colin Gubbins and Lieutenant Commander Ian Fleming, backed indirectly by Churchill, prepare for Operation Postmaster. The goal is simple: cripple the German resupply chain at Fernando Po.
Commander Fleming. Ian Fleming.
SOE agents Marjorie Stewart and Richard Herron are brought into the fold, and Major Gus March Phillips is assigned to lead the ground team responsible for taking out the Duchessa and its tugboats. Herron, already stationed undercover on Fernando Po, runs an illegal gambling operation, rubbing shoulders with high-ranking Nazis. Marjorie, on the other hand, will pose as a gold trader from New York, tasked with seducing and distracting the German commander, Heinrich Löhr.
Motivated how so?
The team has a tight deadline, 44 days before the Nazis move their operations elsewhere. Herron and Marjorie must ensure the Duchessa is fully loaded with supplies, making its destruction as damaging as possible to the enemy. Gus carefully picks his squad: Anders Lassen, a fearless Danish naval officer who once wrestled bears as a child; Freddy Alvarez, an expert in explosives; Henry Hayes, a skilled sailor out for revenge after the Nazis killed his brother;
What we need to know.
and master strategist Jeffrey Appleyard. However, Gus soon learns that Appleyard, whom Gubbins had sent ahead, has been captured by the Germans. Believing that Appleyard holds vital information crucial to the mission, Gus and his team decide to alter their course and stage a daring rescue in Nazi-controlled territory in the Canary Islands. Meanwhile, Marjorie and Herron travel by train to Fernando Po, laying the groundwork for the operation.
We're stuck with fish and chips.
During the journey, they stealthily steal a German officer's suitcase, discovering a cargo manifest detailing a significant shipment aboard the Duchessa: 400 B-grade torpedoes, 5,000 tons of diesel, and 10,000 CO2 filters. After quickly copying the information, they return the suitcase without raising suspicion. Back in London, Churchill faces pressure from military leaders urging him to consider surrender, convinced that Britain cannot hold out against Germany.
Gutter sniper. This is not.
But Churchill refuses to back down. He knows that if Operation Postmaster fails and is exposed, it could cost him his position, as Parliament would likely force him out. Despite the risks, he's willing to take the gamble. After successfully sinking the German destroyer at the beginning of the story, Gus and his team still have 18 days to reach Fernando Po. They travel aboard a Swedish fishing trawler, the Maid of Honor, carefully navigating down the West African coast.
That should be about 15 each.
Their sailboat is packed with explosives meant for the final stage of the operation, the destruction of the Duchessa. Arriving in La Palma, they realize that a high-ranking German officer is already on site. If Appleyard is moved, they'll lose their chance to rescue him. With no time to waste, Gus decides to launch the rescue operation in broad daylight. During a scouting mission, 2 German patrolmen spot them. But Anders takes them out swiftly with his bow and arrows. Moving with precision, he also eliminates the guards in the watchtowers, ensuring the team can proceed undetected. Even with everything on the line, Gus and his squad keep their cool, charging into a heavily armed German base as if they were on a casual stroll. Inside the command center, Anders wastes no time. He finds Appleyard and, without missing a beat, takes out every German soldier in the room with nothing but a knife. Meanwhile, Marjorie and Heron arrive on Fernando Po ahead of schedule, getting things ready for Gus's arrival. Using Heron's underground gambling den as their headquarters, they discreetly recruit local allies to strengthen Gus's squad. Marjorie, playing the part of a glamorous gold trader, seduces SS Commander Heinrich Löhr, earning his trust while bargaining over some valuable gold. To keep the Germans distracted when Gus's sailboat reaches the island, Heron organizes an extravagant party at both his club and the docks, making sure the enemy is too busy indulging to notice anything suspicious. He also gets a critical piece of intel from his friend, Captain Benia, a Spanish officer who isn't a fan of the Germans occupying his territory. Benia warns them that the Duchessa is now scheduled to leave 3 days sooner than expected, which cranks up the pressure on their operation. With 2 weeks left before they arrive, Gus and his team take a longer, more cautious route to dodge German U-boats patrolling the African coastline. But then Gus gets an urgent radio message, and he makes a bold call, sailing straight through a British naval blockade off Nazi-occupied West Africa. The gamble could cut 3 days off their journey, but if they're caught, they could be arrested on the spot. Meanwhile, back in Europe, Germany intensifies its war strategy, launching relentless bombing raids over London. As Gus's sailboat makes its way through the blockade, a British destroyer under Admiral Pound's command intercepts them. Just when it seems like the mission is over before it even begins, a German U-boat unexpectedly attacks, forcing the British ship to retreat and giving Gus and his crew the perfect opportunity to slip away undetected. Back on Fernando Po, Heron and Marjorie reach out to Prince Kambili Kalu, asking for a tugboat to meet Gus's crew outside the harbor. Understanding the high stakes, Kambili not only agrees, but also provides additional men to assist in case the Germans put up a fight. On the night of the mission, Heron sets up 2 massive parties, one for the officers, another for the sailors, keeping the enemy occupied with endless booze and entertainment. During the chaos, Marjorie and Heron discover that SS Commander Löhr has secretly reinforced the Duchessa's hull, ignoring protests from its Italian captain, Umberto. This last-minute modification makes the ship almost impossible to sink. Meanwhile, a traitor within Gubbin's circle leaks the details of the mission to British High Command. Admiral Pound orders the operation to be stopped immediately, but Gus refuses to back down. Gubbins alerts Churchill about the security breach, but remains certain that Gus and his team won't let anything stop them. After all, Gus was selected for this mission because he doesn't take no for an answer. With the warning coming just in time, Gus and Appleyard shift their approach. Instead of trying to sink the Duchessa, they decide to hijack the ships and sail them out of the harbor, planning to deliver them to the British Navy. Appleyard and Anders take charge of storming the Duchessa, while Gus and Freddy rig explosives at the harbor's fuel depots to prevent the Germans from chasing them down. Gus and Hayes seize control of the tugboats, preparing to haul the Duchessa out to open waters. Freddy sets charges to blow up the Duchessa's anchor, making sure they can drag it out smoothly. But then, something goes wrong. The fuel depot explodes ahead of schedule, alerting the Germans before the Duchessa is fully unmoored. The alarmed soldiers abandon their party and launch an all-out assault on the escaping tugboats. A fierce battle breaks out, with Gus's squad, reinforced by Cambili's men, fighting back with everything they've got. Despite the overwhelming resistance, they successfully drag the Duchessa into open waters, securing their mission's success. Lure, realizing Marjorie has been deceiving him the whole time, tries to intervene, but it's too late. Before he can act, Marjorie shoots him in the head, ensuring that nothing stops their escape. With the mission accomplished, she and Heron hijack a patrol boat and set off to meet the Duchessa at sea. After successfully handing over the stolen ships to a British fleet near Lagos, Gus and his crew are promptly arrested for their unauthorized actions. While waiting for their court-martial, they receive an unexpected lifeline. Churchill personally steps in, not only saving them, but officially bringing them into his newly formed Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. Their daring raid has not only disrupted the Nazis' naval operations, but has also cleared the way for the United States, fresh off the attack on Pearl Harbor, to enter the war in Europe. As the film wraps up, we see glimpses of what happened to the key players after the mission. Gus becomes a legendary war hero, leading several more high-stakes operations before eventually marrying Marjorie, who goes on to have a successful acting career. Appleyard is decorated with multiple awards, reportedly to the amusement of the king himself. Hayes becomes a legendary spy, surviving an entire year of brutal Nazi torture without ever revealing classified information. Lassen continues his reckless, high-risk raids until his eventual death in 1945. And Ian Fleming, who had been working closely with Gubbins throughout the mission, later draws inspiration from Operation Postmaster for his James Bond novels. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to hit that like button. And if you didn't, hit the dislike button twice, just to be sure. The full movie is worth a watch, so don't miss it. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe for more exciting content.